So there is a lot to go through in the Introduction to Tools Owner's Guide. You'll see we have a tools philosophy, how we use them and why. We're going to actually start today with the Getting to Know Your Tools section, an e-collar self-test, and we're going to quickly discuss the phases of tool training so that you know what we're getting started with. But I encourage you on your own time to take an hour or so, go through every page of this tools guide in depth, and be sure to post any questions you have after reading through it on your own to the Facebook group. Getting started with our prong collars, we're going to go through how they work, how your dog should wear them, what they feel like, the different types of pressure that we can use them for, so that you know how you're going to be using this. So the prong collar itself is a series of independent links, all connected to each other. And on each link, you have 2 points of contact. Combined in this chain, you end up with a collar that has anywhere from 14 to maybe 20 or 30 points of contact around the dog's neck. And those points of contact are what evenly distribute the pressure when the dog applies pressure to the end of the leash. So when the dog gets to the end of the leash, all of the pressure that's on the leash from their weight, from their force, from their momentum and movement, all of that will then contract the prong collar, and the weight then will then evenly distribute across each prong point around the dog's neck versus a flat collar, which just has one single point of contact right on the front of the dog's neck. Now, to that point, the prong collar itself protects the front of your dog's neck where their trachea is located using a flat plate. So if you got your prong collar from the equipment list or using the product recommendations I provide, you should have a prong collar that looks like this. It has a flat plate that says Springer on it. It's a bunch of smaller links combined to make the bigger collar. When the collar is properly contracted, you'll see you have a back link and then a swivel. The swivel is where your leash will connect. And the front plate, this flat plate, is what goes on the front of the dog's neck so that when the collar contracts, you can see that the prong pressure will be distributed across and around the dog's trachea versus directly on it, which is what happens with a slip lead or flat collar. So I want you to be really comfortable with the type of pressure that the prong collar creates for your dog. And so we're going to go ahead and do a little self-test. I want everyone to open their prong collars. And to do that, you're going to take any of these loops, you're going to take any of these links, slide one link up. You'll go ahead and press, pinch in, and then these pop out. So again, we'll do that again. Slide any link up where it connects, pinch together, pinch those little link legs together, and then you just pull it out of the little holes. To put it back in, you pinch these legs together, and then you pop it back into the holes. So you go ahead and open up your prong collar, pinch, pull it out, and then I want you to wrap this around your thigh. I don't want you to put this on your neck because your neck actually doesn't have the same muscular density that a dog's neck does. Your thigh is actually much more comparable. So I want you to go ahead and put the prong collar on your thigh. And now we're going to talk about the different forms of pressure. So there's 2 particular forms of pressure when it comes to a prong collar. We have steady pressure on, and then we have prong popping. So when your pressure is on, you're going to go ahead and see a little triangle get created. You can see here, there's this little triangle. So this means, and you can feel it, the pressure is on the leash. So if your leash is connected to this, let's say your dog is pulling ahead of you, you're going to see this triangle. This means that they can feel the pressure all the way around their neck. So when we're actually in a forward motion with our dogs and we want them to think that everything is good, that pressure actually needs to be fully off. Dogs learn from the release of pressure, not the pressure itself. And so we only want pressure to be on when our dogs are needing to pay attention, follow us, or take direction. The pressure should not be on if there's no feedback being given. And so that's a big theme of this whole training program is pressure on, pressure off, whether we're using prong collar pressure on or we're using an e-collar, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. Pressure on means that we want the dog to pay attention. We're trying to give it information. We're trying to communicate, and the pressure should be off if we're not trying to communicate. The difference between pressure on and a correction when using a prong collar looks like this. So when your pressure is just on, again, you'll see that little triangle. And when the pressure is off, there will be no triangle. When you're trying to correct your dog, though, we're going to have the pressure on for just a quick second, right? It's going to be like a snap of the finger, or you can think of it like a crack of the whip, right? We want it to be a quick second, nothing more, nothing less, because pressure on is different than a quick correction. So what a prong pop really is going to look like is you can see the pressure turns off. You can see the pressure turns on and off very quickly, right? It's not pressure on, it's prong pop, right? You pop your leash and the pressure should immediately turn off right after. When your dog is wearing a prong collar, again, they should be pressure free. So short of giving them feedback or guidance or a correction, they should just feel the weight of the collar sitting on their neck. So where should this be positioned then on your dog? Now that we know what it feels like and the different types of pressure. This is my best behaved dog in my pack. This is my best behaved dog in my pack. And the dog that I use for the sake of demonstrations for tools. So we want the prong collar to be worn really nice and high up behind the dog's ears. We don't want it to hang down like a flat collar with tags. We want it to be nice and high, snug up behind the dog's ears. It should be just tight enough that it doesn't slide down without, pulling on it. And we should be able to fit probably 1 or 2 fingers just under 1 or 2 sets of those contact points, those two links. Again, this should be a pretty tight collar. It shouldn't really move around. It shouldn't hang down. When the dog is wearing it, they should feel it sitting there. And it will just be like a nice choker necklace, unless it's engaged. When the pressure gets engaged, you see that triangle, right? That triangle we just talked about, that means pressure is on. When you're walking with your dog, they should have no pressure. It should be just sitting here, resting on their neck. If you see this on the walk, we know we need to work through the pressure to make sure that the pressure is off and the dog is in the right position. So again, prong collar is worn nice high up behind the ears with the pressure off. It should just sit there nice and comfortably like a choker necklace. Until the prong is engaged, it's just another collar. Just to iterate the 2 different types of pressure, right? Pressure on versus a prong pop. Pressure on versus a prong pop. Really quick, like a wrist flick. Now we're going to talk through your e-collar. So when your e-collar comes out of the box, it comes with a partial charge, so you can use it out of the box for this activity. We're going to talk through how to turn your e-collars on, both the collar and the remote. We're going to talk about the display of the e-collar, what everything means on it. We're going to talk about how to lock or unlock your level. We're going to talk through the night light feature. We're going to check that your e-collar is set to tone versus vibrate. And then we're going to do a little self-test before we discuss how this relates to controlling your dog's arousal and communicating effectively. So just to get started, we're going to go ahead and make sure our e-collar is on. Again, it comes with a partial charge out of the box. And so you can use it right out of the box for this exercise. So go ahead and go get your e-collars and then come back. But to start, on your remote, on the side that has a single button with a little T on it, you're going to see there's a red button, a small red dot. On your dog's e-collar, the device that they wear, if you look at the top, you're going to see a similar red dot. Okay, we're going to touch those 2 red dots together. And when we do, you're going to see the LED indicator turn green. That's how we know that the e-collar is on. Now it will start blinking. And so this is how we know our e-collar is on and it's charged. When your e-collar is dying, that green light turns yellow, orange, and then red before it dies completely. So it gives you an adequate notification. It gives you adequate notification that you need to charge your e-collar. Now that your e-collar is on, we need to make sure our remote is on. So if you look at the back of your e-collar, right, this is the front, this is the back, you're going to see there's two buttons. You're going to see an on, off, or light switch, and then an MC button. We're going to go ahead and press and hold the power button or the light button, the one that's labeled with an L. Press and hold it until your display turns on. Beautiful. When your remote comes out of the box, it should come set to a 0. It should have an M and a C on the screen and then a 1D, and that 1D should be blinking. You'll see an M, a 0, and a C, and then a 1D is blinking. If you're an experienced e-collar user already, and you've worked with another trainer, let's say, and you've already found your dog's working level, and they locked your e-collar remote so that you can't change the level, you'll see on your screen the 1D will not be blinking. And when you dial up and down on the dial, the level doesn't change. We need your e-collar to be unlocked. So if you're an experienced e-collar user, make sure you unlock your e-collar level. You'll do that by just pressing and holding, press down on the dial until that 1D starts blinking. Just like that. We can go ahead and dial all the way back down to 0. So now we know that our e-collars are on. They are set to be able to adjust the level. We're going to talk through the difference between momentary and continuous stim. So the M and the C on your display means momentary and continuous stimulation. The M refers to this black button, and then the continuous refers to this red button. When you press and hold on either button, they only work as the M or the C is intended. So if you press and hold on the momentary stim button, the black button, you'll see that the e-collar remote, the red light only turns on for a second. You'll see that the e-collar, the LED indicator only turns red for a second. I'm pressing and holding the button, but it only gave a momentary stim to the dog, right? Red light only turns on for a second. When the red light is on, you know the dog is feeling stim. So you can press and hold the momentary stim button all you want, but a dog is only going to receive a second of stim. If, however, you press and hold the continuous stim button, the red button, you'll see these red lights stay on longer until I release the button, or a certain amount of seconds. After 10 seconds, the stim will automatically turn off, or when you release that red button. If you see the red light on your remote and the red light on the collar, you know your dog is feeling the stimulation at whatever level your remote is set to. You press and hold for 10 seconds and it will automatically turn off. If you want the stim to stay on, you need to repress and hold every 9 seconds to keep the stim on. That said, we want to be using momentary and continuous stim for the sake of training. So your remote should say M and C, and you'll want to be using and familiar with how both of those buttons work. Again, when you press either of these buttons, there is just a quick little second of stim, like a little tap on the shoulder. If you press and hold on the red button, the continuous stim button, the stim stays on for 10 seconds until you let go. But if you press and hold the black button, the momentary button, they still only get that single second of stim. So it's worth familiarizing yourself and being really comfortable with how those two buttons work and their differences, because we do use them both throughout the course of training. So now that we know how to turn on our remote, how to turn on our collar, we know what the display means, we know how to unlock and lock the remote. I'm going to show you quickly Oh, we have our night light. You can press and hold on that power button and you'll see the night light on the dog's collar starts flashing. Press and hold again. The light turns solid. Press it again to turn the light off. If you're ever not sure if your e-collar is on, and let's say it's like upside down so you can't see the blinking light, you can just use the night light to see if it turns on to find out if it's on or dead. If the e-collar night light turns on, it's reasonably assumed that the e-collar is charged and on, and it should be working if we have good contact. So we know how to turn it on. We know what the display means. We know how to unlock it. We know how to lock it. We know how to use our night light. So now we need to make sure that it's on tone. When these come out of the box, they're often already set to tone, but sometimes they're set to vibrate. So to find out the difference, you're going to go ahead and press on that single T button. That single button all by itself, just go ahead and press it. If your e-collar is already set to tone, you'll hear it beep. If your e-collar is set to vibrate, you will have heard it or felt it vibrate just now in your hand. We want our e-collar set to tone because in the event we press the button, we want that to be just a little beep instead of a heavy vibrate, because that can be really alarming and unsettling for a dog that doesn't know what to do with that kind of pressure. So we want our e-collar remotes and collars to be set to tone. We don't actually use tone for recall or for communication here, but if a button gets pressed accidentally, we would rather it be tone than anything else. So to reset and shift to shift your e-collar from vibrate to tone, you just make sure that your remote is set to 0. And then you're going to press and hold that power button and the T button at the same time until you hear a beep. Now I know that this is set to tone. If I press the T button, it's going to beep. Again, we don't use tone for recall or for communication, but if you press the button, we would rather it be the light tone than a heavy vibrate. So now that we know how to turn our e-collars on, we know what the display means, we know how to dial up and down, we know how to use our night light, we've checked to make sure that it's on tone instead of vibrate. Now we're going to go ahead and do a quick self-test to find your human working level and have a quick conversation about the bear and how the bear impacts your dog's arousal. So to find your working level, we do it the same way that we do it with a dog. However, it's a little bit different. So rather than put the e-collar on your neck, you're going to go ahead and take your e-collar, which should be on, blinking green. You'll go ahead and take those contact points. And if you want to apply this to the muscular tissue beneath your thumb, right where your thumb connects to your palm. You can see in that little section right there is where I'm going to put the e-collar contact point. Now, if you do strength training in a gym and you have excessive grip strength, you'll want to do this exercise on the inside of your elbow where you have less muscle strength, grip strength. So I'm going to do this exercise for the sake of the demonstration right here on my palm. I'm just going to lightly touch the e-collar there so that I know I have some light contact and hold it there while I just one at a time there we go. While I just one at a time, starting at 0, dial up on this e-collar and I'll tap twice until I find a level on the e-collar that I can feel a little warm, tingly sensation on these contact points on my skin. It's not going to be anything crazy. It's just going to be a nice little light, warm, tingling sensation. I'm at a 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. I can feel that. So I can feel a little warm tingling through the contact point on my skin right there. And so I'm going to dial down from here, like 1 level to a 7. And now I'm going to press and hold on the red button, continuous stim. So you can feel that nice, warm, tingly sensation. It's nothing painful, just a warm tingle until you release the button, right? And when you press and tap, tap, now you can feel the difference between the continuous stim, which just stays on until you release the stim, versus that tap, tap. So these low working levels, right? Imagine now, we said we were going to have a conversation about arousal. So if my working level is a 7, and I would like for you to post whatever your working level is in the Facebook group so we can talk about it. But imagine you were being chased by a bear, right? If I'm being chased by a bear and I'm wearing an e-collar and someone's tapping it at a level 7, would that be enough to stop me from running from a bear? Would that be enough to stop me in my tracks and get my attention and refocus my attention from being chased from a bear? No, a level 7 would not be enough to convince me to stop trying to save my life in that moment. When we think about arousal and the levels on the e-collar that we should be using to communicate effectively, we need to keep in mind the bear, right? Or the arousal level that our dog has. And we need to keep in mind that the bear could be anything. It may not be an obvious threat to our dog's life. It could be anything from the dog that they see, the rabbit, the squirrel, the mailman. It could be something they really love. Let's say they really love to say hi to people and they get really excited about that. We need to think of arousal for the dogs, not just negative stress, fear type of arousal. We also need to consider like what positive, healthy arousal does. And the fact is that both fear-based arousal or playful, excited arousal is arousal. And it impacts the level on the e-collar you need to communicate effectively the same way. Whether your dog is super fearful or they're super excited, doesn't matter. They're still super aroused. And so we need to find a level on the e-collar in any given situation that's just slightly high enough that the dog can feel it, prioritize it, and respond to it, right? And so whether we're teaching or we're motivating our dogs to problem solve or we're trying to correct them, the level on the e-collar will change between each of those different situations. If I'm teaching a dog, I'm going to be using a lower level because I'm probably in a lower distraction environment. And so my e-collar will reflect that. If though the dog starts becoming disengaged and they're not interested in participating and they're becoming distracted while I'm working with them, I'm going to start increasing the pressure on the e-collar to more of a motivational level so that I can find a level that matters to keep my dog engaged and motivate them to problem solve to stay engaged and to motivate them to problem solve to keep pressure off by staying engaged. And if I'm trying to correct a dog, the level that I'm using on the e-collar to say, no, you may never have this again, that level certainly can't be my low working level because that's not even a level that I can feel if I'm slightly aroused. Now we're looking at a level that's anywhere from 3 to 5 times that low working level that's going to be necessary to say no and have a dog really understand that that's not comfortable and I don't want to repeat that in the future because I want to keep that pressure off. So when we're working with e-collars, we really need to keep in mind the bear and the arousal level that we're combating through this process. As we go out into the world, the e-collar level that you need inside your house will go, the e-collar level that you use in your house will be different from the e-collar level you probably need to communicate with your dog effectively outside of your house, around triggers and distractions. And so throughout the course of training, you need to keep this in mind because as you're posting questions and you're posting feedback and homework to that Facebook group, I may ask you, what level are you using on your e-collar? And we need to have a conversation then about, is your e-collar level exceeding, or then we need to have a conversation about, is your e-collar level matching or just slightly exceeding your dog's arousal level? And is that level at an appropriate and is that level an appropriate amount of pressure based on what you're trying to achieve with your dog, whether that be teaching it, motivating it to problem solve, or correcting it, otherwise saying no. And so that's the conversations we'll be having along the way. And so I really wanted you to understand what the low level feels like and to have that conversation so that you're aware and able to navigate complex situations related to your dog's arousal levels accordingly. With the e-collar, we're able to apply actual numbers to our dog's arousal, and then we have a better point of reference while we're training and working through the process of rehabilitating difficult behavior. So keep that in mind. If it's feeling like a negotiation, if it's feeling like I'm using my e-collar, but my dog can't feel it, they probably can't because the arousal level they have is so much higher than the level on your e-collar. If you have any questions along the way, and I absolutely expect you to, don't hesitate to post in the Facebook group. Please include recorded sessions of you working with the e-collar, you working with your dog. If you can, remember what level we're using, post that as part of your update. And we can talk through what levels you should be using to communicate effectively in any situation. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to cover off on the different phases of tool training. So we start here with prong collar training so that we can teach dogs what to do with pressure, pressure on versus pressure off. Then we move on to your e-collar training. E-collar training, we use both a 4-step introduction protocol and a 4-step obedience training sequence, meaning we introduce the e-collar specifically as an object in your dog's life, separately from how we use it to condition or train for obedience. So what we do is first we find your dog's working levels or your motivational levels. Then we layer that pressure over come or your body as a magnet. Then we're going to layer that e-collar pressure over your leash and your spatial pressure. And then lastly, we'll layer your e-collar over known commands like sit or down and build a lot of accountability to those. The 4-step obedience training process is very simple. It's going to be low-level pressure on until the dog fully follows through with a behavior or a command. Then after that's looking and feeling really nice, we turn the pressure off after the dog is 50% committed to the command. So let's say we're using sit as an example. In the first phase, the pressure on the e-collar will stay on until the dog's butt is all the way on the ground. And then in the second phase of e-collar training, now we have the dog, they put their butt down, but now we can turn the e-collar off when their butt's halfway down. So the 50%, where the first phase, the e-collar pressure is on until the butt is on the ground before it turns off. Now with the second phase in e-collar training, the pressure is on, off until the dog is 50% committed, and it stays off as long as the dog follows through. Then after that's looking and feeling really comfortable on any particular command, then we can move to pressure on cue, which means I just tap the e-collar once when I say the cue. Now that you're sitting nicely and I'm releasing that pressure sooner, now I just use the pressure for a quick reminder, sit, the dog sits, no more pressure. That starts feeling good 3 to 5 times in. I'm saying sit, I'm tapping once, the dog is sitting nicely. Now I'm gonna move on to phase 4, which is when I just say sit and the dog either does it or I have to repeat myself. And if I do, I tap on that repeat. So any particular phase of this along the way, if it starts feeling messy, you just take a step back to the phase prior, which makes it super easy. That said, often during the training process, if you get stuck in any particular phase, you should take a step back so that you can not just retrain at the phase prior, but also increase your e-collar pressure to motivate your dog to really be accountable, be present, and to stay engaged through the process. Now, with that, we're going to end on a quick conversation about the 3 ranges of e-collar stim. So we break down 100 So on your e-collar, there's 100 levels of e-collar. So on your e-collar, there's 100 levels of stimulation, and we break those down into 3 specific categories. We use a low working level, a motivational level, and then a corrective level. You're going to find your dog's working level, and then the motivational level is based on the working level. The corrective level is based on your motivational levels. You find your dog's working level the same way that you find your human working level. You put the collar on the dog really firmly, we scruff it into their neck, and then we start at a 0, dialing up 1 at a time. From there, now we start adding 1 to 2 levels at a time as we're working with the dog to motivate them, keep them engaged, and have them stay in a problem solving place. From there, so we first find the dog's lowest level of pressure, their working level. So we find this the same way we find the human's working level with the collar on the dog properly. We're dialing up 1 at a time until we see just a small ear twitch or a little head tilt. There is a video demonstration that shows me doing this with Harper so that you can see what it looks like. And then from there, we start to reasonably add e-collar pressure as we're working with the dog, moving into what's known as their motivational level on the e-collar. So a slightly higher level that keeps the dog engaged and focused and helps them prioritize keeping the pressure off versus becoming disengaged or building tolerance to pressure. And then from there, your corrective level, or the level that you need to say no to something, could be anywhere from 2 to 3 or maybe even 5 times your working or motivational level, depending on the situation. But the thing is, we do not ever use a corrective level on a dog unless we never want them to do something again. So this isn't a level that you can test to find for your dog. It's a level that you need to look for when you're trying to say no to something. What you can do is do the math prescribed here to find out or reasonably assume what these levels are going to be for your dog. And then as you're working through the program, submit questions, recorded homework, and the levels you're using on the Facebook group so that I can give you feedback. That said, if you don't have good contact on your e-collar on the dog, it will be really hard to find their working level. It will be really hard to know what levels you should be using at any particular time. So we're going to go ahead and talk through where the e-collar needs to be positioned on the dog for you to be successful. Bringing back out my best behaved dog who is wearing his prong collar because we put it on him earlier. The e-collar is going to sit just behind the prong collar. I'm going to have the e-collar receiver box sit on the left, the right, or the back of the dog's neck. More specifically, I prefer it to be on the left or the right because that's where the most muscle density is going to be. And since more specifically, I want it on the left or the right side because that is where the dog's most muscular, dense area on their neck is. And this is a muscle stimulation device, like a TENS unit used in physical therapy. And so we really want it to be, as much as possible, positioned over one of those muscles. What I'm going to do, though, to make sure I have really good contact is I'm going to take the collar and I'm going to scruff it up and down along the length of the dog's neck, like really good. I'm going to scruff it in right under that prong collar, nice and high up, right under the prong, scruff it in so that I know that those contact points are scruffed through the fur and really making contact with the dog's skin. I'm going to press it and hold it while I wrap the collar around and get it clipped, buckled, or belted, whatever accessory you're using. So now our e-collar is on nice and tight. When your dog's e-collar is being worn and fitted appropriately, it shouldn't move around. So you can see, like if I go to move this, it's staying in place. If this dog scratches at it, it stays in place. It doesn't really move around. If they shake, it stays in place. This collar should be so tight that I can only barely squeeze 1 or 2 fingers under the collar strap. And to actually move it from one side to the other, I need to really hold the dog down and drag it to the other side and then scruff it back in, up and down, right? And so put it back, scruff it in. Right? We're going to move this collar from one side to the other every 4 to 6 hours to prevent any hot spots from forming. But it's worth knowing if this collar is too tight or too loose, hot spots are common. So if it's too loose, it will have too much friction and that will create a blister. And if it's too tight, it will create pressure necrosis and otherwise kill the nerves. And so that will cause a sore as well. So the dog should be wearing its e-collar all day when you're home. If it's not wearing an e-collar, you can't communicate using the e-collar. So it's something your dog needs to be wearing all day when we're home. That said, we should be moving it from one side to the other every 4 to 6 hours or so. or 6 to 8 at most, so that we can avoid any pressure spots or hot spots from forming. Lastly, something we do for a safety protocol is we back clip your prong collar to your e-collar, or we back clip your prong collar to a flat collar. I'm going to back clip this prong collar to the e-collar because the dog isn't wearing a flat collar, but you can back clip it to either. We do this for safety reasons. Prong collars, as amazing as these tools are known to fail mechanically. The links come popping off every once in a while. We miss the loop when we're putting it on the dog. And so just to prevent any mechanical failure from happening, we want to back clip the prong collar to another collar. So in the event it pops off the dog, we still have a dog on the end of the leash. When you're looking at the prong collar, when the pressure is on, you can see two loops. You can see this nice swivel loop, which is where our leash connects. But then behind it, there's a larger back loop. What we're gonna do is use a carabiner. You can use anything to back clip your dog's prong collar to another collar. I like to use a carabiner for simplicity purposes and because they're pretty cost effective, but they do actually make prong specific back clips, safety links that you can buy on Amazon or I think even at your local PetSmart. I like a nice simple carabiner because simple is how I roll. So all you're going to do is when your dog's prong collar is fully extended in that triangle pressure on, you can see there's your swivel loop, which is where your leash connects. But then right behind it, there's this larger back loop. What we're going to do is take your safety clip, connect it to that back loop, and then we're going to connect that to your other collar. So you can see I just have the carabiner connected to that back loop and then linked through the e-collar. What this does is it, again, prevents loss of dog in the event of a mechanical failure. So if my leash is connected to this swivel, right, and my carabiner is back clipping my prong collar to my e-collar, what happens is if in the event of a mechanical failure, and I can make that happen pretty quickly, in the event of a mechanical failure and my leash is only connected to the prong collar, I still have a dog on this leash because of that carabiner or safety clip being back clipped from the prong collar to the e-collar. So that is just a safety protocol that we use to prevent a dog from running away in the event of that mechanical failure. If a prong collar doesn't work or falls apart or comes undone, then we still have a dog at the end of the leash.